The invitation arrived in a pale pink envelope that felt strangely cheerful for something sent to a widow. My sister's handwriting was the same as always, rounded, careful, almost childish. Inside was a small card with gold lettering announcing her baby shower. At the bottom, she had written a short note in pen. "It would mean a lot if you came." I stared at the words for a long time. My husband had been gone for 8 months. In that time, my sister and I had barely spoken. Not because we fought, but because something quiet and uncomfortable had settled between us after the funeral. Still, she was my sister, and this was a child entering the family, so I went. The event was held at my parents' house. Balloons floated near the ceiling, tied in soft clusters of pink and white. There was a long table covered with gifts wrapped in pastel paper. My mother moved through the room with a fixed smile that looked almost rehearsed. When I arrived, several relatives glanced up at once. The kind of glance people exchange when they know something you don't. I told myself I was imagining it. My sister greeted me with a hug that felt quick and stiff. She looked radiant in the way pregnant women often do. But there was also a brightness in her eyes that felt slightly off, like someone waiting for a cue. The party moved along normally for a while. People chatted. Plates clinked. Someone asked me how I had been managing since the funeral, and I answered the way widows often do, carefully, without saying too much. At one point, I noticed my father standing near the kitchen doorway watching the room instead of participating in it. I should have recognized that look earlier. Eventually, my sister stood up near the gift table and tapped her glass lightly. Everyone quieted. "I wanted to thank all of you for coming," she began, smiling as she rested a hand on her stomach. It sounded like the start of a normal baby shower speech. But then her eyes shifted toward me. "There's something important I think the family deserves to know." A strange stillness spread through the room. She took a breath, as if preparing herself for something emotional. "The father of my baby," she said slowly, "is actually someone you all knew very well." My stomach tightened. She turned fully toward me. "It's her husband." For a moment I thought I had misunderstood the sentence. But then the room erupted into murmurs. My sister continued speaking quickly, as if afraid someone might interrupt her. "We kept it secret because it was complicated. But now that he's gone, the truth deserves to be acknowledged, and my child deserves what's rightfully his." She paused. Then she said the real reason for the speech, which means half of his inheritance should go to the baby. A few people gasped. Others looked at me with uncomfortable curiosity. The strange thing was that I didn't feel the reaction everyone expected. No wave of anger, no urge to argue, just a quiet, familiar clarity. I had suspected something like this might happen the moment the invitation arrived, which is why I had brought a folder with me. I let the murmurs settle for a moment. The silence stretched long enough that people began shifting in their seats. Then I reached into my bag. The folder was thin. Mostly estate paperwork I had been carrying back and forth for months. I stood up and walked slowly toward my sister. Up close, I could see the confidence in her posture. The way she believed the room had already chosen her side. I handed her the first document. She frowned slightly and unfolded it. It was a medical report from the hospital where my husband had been treated during the final year of his illness. Below that was another document. And another. I didn't explain them. I didn't need to. My sister's eyes moved across the pages, slowly at first. Then faster, her expression changed in a way that was almost subtle, like color draining out of a photograph, because the documents made one thing very clear. For nearly a year before he died, my husband had been physically incapable of fathering a child. The room had gone completely silent. She turned another page. That one contained the legal timeline from our estate lawyer confirming medical documentation had already been submitted as part of the inheritance process. Her hands began to tremble slightly. Behind us, a chair scraped against the floor. Our family's lawyer, who had come that afternoon because we were scheduled to review some estate paperwork afterward, stepped forward quietly. He adjusted his glasses and spoke in a calm, professional tone. "These records were verified during probate," he said. "Legally speaking, the claim that Mr. Hassan fathered this child would be impossible according to the documented medical timeline. No accusation, no raised voice, just facts. The effect was immediate. The whispers that followed were softer now, less curious and more uncomfortable." My sister stood frozen with the papers in her hands. Across the room, my mother had covered her mouth. My father looked at the floor. No one knew what to say next. After a moment, I gently took the documents back and placed them in the folder. There didn't seem to be anything else to add. Guests began gathering their purses and jackets, leaving in slow clusters with awkward goodbyes. The cheerful decorations suddenly looked misplaced, like props from a party that had never actually happened. My sister didn't look at me again. I walked outside before the house fully emptied. The evening air was cool and quiet. For the first time in months, I felt something close to steadiness. Not relief exactly. Just the sense that something heavy had been set back where it belonged. A few minutes later, the front door opened behind me. My parents stepped out. They looked older than they had that morning. My mother started to speak, then stopped. My father cleared his throat, but didn't finish whatever sentence he had begun. None of us seemed to know what the right words were. So, after a moment, I simply said goodbye, and I walked to my car, leaving the house, and whatever remained of that version of our family behind me in the quiet glow of the porch light.